it's the people who are like, oh, if I were there, or if that would happen to me, I would have done this, that, and the other. And I'm like, you don't know that.
Now, you mentioned not only the combative sporting aspect and the combative aspect of it, the striking, the grappling, the wrestling. You also mentioned, weapons defense, active killer situations, firearm retention. Like, how does those things play a role in the development of someone to have better or more pragmatic view of violent situations than it'd be if it was just the boxing or just the Muay Thai, just the whatever sport aspect of it that you're doing?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing there is just variables. So if I walk into a boxing match, I touch hands, I don't have to worry about kicks, takedowns, blades, box cutters, like baseball bats, nothing. I
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm getting into. But if I'm dealing with somebody, actively stabbing somebody else, or maybe I don't even know what I'm dealing with. Somebody's coming up at me, yelling at me. Um, the chance of variables to increase and the fight to change, the longer whatever the altercation is goes on, those variables, chance of change in those variables goes up. And so I have to be ready to adapt with them and understand how to, again, blend striking and wrestling or whatever it might be for the context at hand.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I feel like we're gonna stay at this one for a while. um, and so thinking back to the things that I have been learning is that adrenaline and the adrenal dump really plays a big part in how well you can still maintain those fine motor skills as Shin
Uh-huh.
and Pan meet over the course of
Uh-huh.
whatever it may be. Um, I assume just because I follow, like I said, I followed the work that you guys do for a while, that you've found ways to induce those high stress level situations to where adrenaline dump is horrendous, and people have to be able to work through that and still use the skills that they have developed in those kind of situations. So how does that look in Fit to Fight?
Yeah, so there are different levels to that, because we'll get that kind of adrenaline dump from people coming in for their first class, but it's not because there's yelling and screaming, the lights are out, and we have a strobe light, and we're shooting simunition next to them. It's because they have their eyes closed, like that, and
Mm-hmm.
that's enough right there. Like, I don't know what's going to happen,
What's going
even though I'm
on?
going to tell them like this is exactly what's going to happen. They're going to come up, they're going to bump your shoulder, you're going to open your eyes, you're going to do what you just learned, but it's it spikes their heart rate up, or it's because
Mm-hmm.
they're doing an explosive movement like a burpee or something, or pummeling or whatever, whatever horribleness to get their heart rate up. And then as they advance, that changes. So when you get to like our black belt testing level, they're all different. But 1 year we had them, out on a live range doing uh, kettlebell swings, dealing with multiple attackers. They had to get a tourniquet on a dummy who was bleeding out. They had to carry their tourniqueted dummy to a different location and run back and get to their weapon. And there's a bunch of different variables and different things that are going on that they're going to have to manage and deal with. So um, the way you can get that adrenaline dump, it varies by their ability. Because again, if I get that person walking in for their first day and I'm like, I'm going to play gunshots over the speaker, and they don't come back because like they're you know horribly terrified, then it's going to be a problem.
Yeah. But if they do come back, I'll be a little worried. This
but
person's
but
a little crazy. I like it.
they're either going to be one of your best members or your hardest to deal with, but I'll leave that for another time.
Okay. Um, so with all the training that you've done, it's been more than 10 years. You've been training martial arts since you were a child. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like maybe 20 something years.
Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah, about
20,
it's
so I'll
it's
say
about
what,
20 something here,
20?
yeah.
Okay. I don't want to blast ages out here on you. Right?
I'm going to keep it a secret like my height.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. So and also with what you're doing now. Um,
Mhm.
have you ever experienced any violent encounters? Let's start with that question.
Violent, experienced violent encounters, no. Um, avoided some probably bad situations, definitely.
Oh, okay. We'll play into that one. I like that. Okay.
Well, I'll let you get to that, but yeah. And I mean, I had my share of school bullies and things like that. I haven't had any violent encounters as an adult,
Mhm.
that I've had to, I've been attacked or had to use something like specific, but
Okay. Now, I like how you said I've avoided many of situations.
don't have the stats on that. You don't know every second of every day.
Like, what do you mean you avoided? So I think some people would assume like, what? Like you'd be able to defend yourself and do all these things. There are other aspects of the martial arts or the combatives that people don't really talk about. All we usually hear about is like, oh, here's the techniques that you need, here's the skills, all
Mhm.
those hard skills.
Yeah.
Avoidance is one of those soft skills. And so can you go into that?
Yeah. So important too, right? Because like,
Mhm.
but I promise I'll get to your question. If in
Continue.
training, like in training, you like plenty of things go wrong, right? Like if
Mhm.
you just look at jujitsu, like I do something to try it and I'm like, oh, that was a really bad idea. As I end up on my back with the person choking me, I'm like, shoot, that didn't
Yeah.
work out like I thought. And obviously I may have taken a risk and ended up there, but it still just goes to show you that like things happen. Um,
Mhm.
Same thing in sparring. You think you're doing a good job zigging and zagging and getting your shots, and then you slip right into something bad and you're like, yep, that sucks. I'm glad that's my friend who just punched me and they're checking to make sure I'm okay rather than
Yeah.
blasting me
Yeah.
through. So
Not
you
some other guys
understand
who
that,
just
right? Yeah, just some dude on the street. So you understand like, things can go really wrong. If I can avoid a fight at any cost, I would rather do that. If it's
Mhm.
gonna have to happen, like I'm gonna bring the fight to them. I'm gonna be the toughest person they've ever had to deal with. But um, when I park and I look around and I'm like, you know what, this is not a right area. I don't get the right feeling. Like I'll leave. And I do it plenty. And my friends and my family, they kind of know, like, I've literally been walking down the street to go to a bar, and we get like maybe halfway there. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to have to walk this path in a couple hours. Like we need to go back to the car and we'll park somewhere else or go somewhere different. Um, and that's so important, and everybody thinks like, well, you don't need training for that, but you kind of do. You need to understand what makes somebody s- seem like a problem, what
Mhm.
what hard skills really mean, and how difficult it is to do the stuff that you have to do to
Mhm.
protect yourself. And it's the people who are like, oh, if I were there, or if that would happen to me, I would have done this, that, and the other. And I'm like, you don't know that. you know
Oh no.
You don't know that. I mean, good for you. I hope so, but I would never be like, "Oh yeah, I wish I were there." Like, no.
That's so like I love how you really just put into just great examples of awareness.
Mhm.
It's like, is this safe? Should I be here right now? Am I gonna enjoy traversing this space after a few drinks and I'm not as
Uh-huh.
coherent as I am right now?
Yeah. Yeah. That thought is super important, I think.
I think that's
Or you're
also
going to
probably
pick
something.
your kid up, and you're like, "Well, when I come back, I'm going to have a toddler running around that I'm trying to hold on to, and their backpack on my shoulder, and that kind of thing." Whatever, it is for your situation, your life, it's something to consider.
Mhm, mhm. And that's something people don't think about. Like also like being an adult also helps kind of change those mindsets.
Yeah, yeah. We won't go into college stories, but yeah,
I'm gonna write down college stories for the next one.
college stories. Yeah, like, subscribe, share, post, and no.
We'll keep that on Patreon so you guys have to pay to get that
There you go.
information. Um, so since we're on the topic of soft skills, which was like not even in here, to be completely honest, what can people do to develop those soft skills so they don't have to use the hard skills?
Yeah. So are there things that can be done? Absolutely, definitely. And I'll go into those. But I will say it helps so much more to have the hard skills to back you up
Hmm.
as you're developing like the soft skills.
Yeah.
Because there are some times that you can't turn around, go the other way, or whatever it might be. You know, there are just some situations where you're going to walk by a group that you're just not comfortable with, and you know, so partly having that confidence about you to not be pegged as a victim comes from knowing that if something kicks off, I can do something. Because it's easy to say, you know, well, you know, stand up tall, walk tall, don't be distracted, don't be on your phone. And all of those things are true. Don't carry all your shopping bags on your arms walking through the parking lot,
Hmm.
or at least be ready to drop them all and get to work and run or whatever. But, you know,
If you need
like
to, right?
if you got to be ready, but um, yeah, so it's those things that we hear, and it is important to define them, because you can't just say, well, you know, be situationally aware,
Hmm.
watch
What
your
does that mean?
surroundings. Yeah, what does that mean? Watch for what, you know? But essentially things that are maybe off the beaten path, because for the most part, the places you go, you frequent regularly. You go
Yeah.
to the bank, you go to work, you go home, you go pick up your kids, whatever it is, you have an idea of what normal looks like. And so recognizing, you know, like for me, I went to the bank one day, and I go around. I don't have anything to do during the day, so I go whenever I want.
Freedom.
It's amazing. Um, hashtag be your own boss. Um, but
CEO
like
status
around
in me, right?
right around 1 and 2 is when I'm like running around getting things done before the world gets out and starts infiltrating my world. And so
I own
usually
this place.
there's
Sorry.
feels good. Usually there's maybe 5 or 6 cars in the parking lot when I go to the bank, and like I could probably tell you who's a teller and different things like that, because like, you know, it's a pretty regular thing for me. And I showed up one day, and there weren't any cars in the parking lot. There were like zero. And it was open. It wasn't a bank holiday or anything. And I just, you know, I was like, this is weird. Not weird enough for me to be like, oh, I'm not going to go into that bank, but just weird enough for me to notice and realize it was a break from a routine. And so I went in, and I kind of checked around, and everything seemed fine. Everybody was fine. And I made the comment to one of the people. I was like, yeah, you know, it was kind of weird walking in here. It was strange. There's no one in the parking lot. I wasn't sure if something was going on. And they were like, and they called me, you know, paranoid. And I'm like, no, I'm aware of my surroundings and what's normal for them. Like
Yeah.
that's the opposite of paranoid, I think. But yeah, don't be afraid of being paranoid. Don't be afraid of insulting somebody because you decided you were going to cross the road or go into a different building to make sure they weren't following you, or whatever it is you need to do. You know, I can't be concerned with these external factors that I don't have control over. All I control is me and what I'm doing. And if I think
Yeah.
there's something wrong over here or something off over here, like I'm in control of what I do.
Yeah. That makes sense. And it's like you also mentioned that things that are like breaks out of your routine. And I think other people notice those things too. That gut feeling. It's like something's not
Yep.
right. But then I'm just
I'm
paranoid and
just,
they override
yeah.
it.
Yep. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
how often does that happen, do you think, for people who aren't kind of like
Just
privy?
regulars.
Like a regular
Just
person,
normal
right?
people.
You regular people. You reggies.
um, it's, I think it happens pretty regularly. I think it probably happens pretty regularly to people. And for the most part, they're able to get away, for lack of a better term, with writing it off and still going about their day and everything being fine. Um, but like, that's not the side I would err on
Yeah.
for me personally, you know, because there are also plenty of people where things happen and you listen to their interviews or see their transcript in the media or hear about it on Dateline or whatever, and they're like,
Mhm.
yeah, there was just something about that guy. I wasn't comfortable around him. And you're like, listen to
Those are the
that. That was
signs.
important, you know? So
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Um, so your advice to people: train the hard skills, develop those soft skills, trust your gut when it's
sure.
telling you something wrong.
Hmm.
Okay.
I
Um,
would rather listen to it and have been wrong, and no harm, no foul. I just had to go a different way to work or park in a different lot, or I crossed the street or whatever it was. That slight inconvenience is far more beneficial than if I didn't listen to it and I was right.
Yeah. And then now you have to get yourself out of that situation.
Right. And even if like everything goes right and it's I do my cool, awesome self-defense moves and I'm in the paper as local Krav Maga instructor beats home invader, whatever. Like, yeah, like, sure, come on down, flood the doors. We're training. I'm still going to go through civil suits and I'm still going to go through investigations. And depending on what happens, I might still end up in jail while cops figure things out. Like, there's so much that goes, into it that I would just rather not have to be a part of it.
Yeah. And so more goes into the self-defense or self-protection aspect than just the fighting. It's like protecting yourself, all those things that can happen negatively after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah. Something about knowing the law, that kind of stuff. Like, there's a whole wide world out there.
It's like so much information you guys don't know. Let's see.
Just don't get in fights.